Hey guys, and a very warm welcome to Simplilearn's YouTube channel. Today, we'll be taking you through an in-depth tutorial on PHP. In this tutorial, we'll cover all the basics of one of the most popular server-side scripting languages, that is PHP. According to researchers, around 80% of the total websites present out there use PHP in one way or another. So it's possible that if you are going through 100 websites in a week, then 80 of them are using PHP. PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor and is an open source server-side scripting language mainly used to create the backend of dynamic websites and web applications. This tutorial will let you understand everything you need to know about PHP. Before that, let me tell you guys that we have regular updates on multiple technology videos. So if you are a tech geek in a continuous hunt for the latest technological trends, then consider getting subscribed to our YouTube channel and followed by form handling in PHP. Once we are done with the basics of PHP, we'll learn how to link a MySQL database to an HTML document with the help of PHP. After that, we'll create a website with the help of PHP. We'll use HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, MySQL, and PHP to create a website. Following that, we'll take you through the roadmap to becoming a PHP developer, and we'll end this video with some frequently asked PHP interview questions. So I'm sure that you guys are excited to dive deep into it. So let's start this video with what is PHP.
Now, before moving on to programming concepts, let us first see what is PHP and some of the reasons why it is useful. Now, PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor, which is a recursive acronym but was originally known as Personal Homepage. PHP is an open source server-side scripting language that is embedded into HTML and used for web development. Now, two main terms to focus here are open source and server-side scripting. Now, open source is a term for technology that is freely available to everyone, while server-side scripting means that the entire PHP script is processed on the server side while the user just enjoys the result. Now, let's move on and see why is PHP useful. Because websites developed in PHP functions faster. With PHP, you can create dynamic web pages. PHP frameworks provide security encryption. It is a cost-efficient and an easy-to-maintain language and is platform independent. That is, PHP scripts can run on any platform without the need of any special plugins. So now that we have some understanding of PHP and why it's useful, let us move on to its programming concepts. Now, the first thing that we need to do is set up the environment for our PHP programs. To do that, we just need two softwares. One is Visual Studio Code. Now, this is where we'll be writing all of our programs, all of our PHP scripts. You can download the Visual Studio Code for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And the second one, and a very important one, is XAMPP. Now, XAMPP is a web server solutions package generally used for creating local web servers and databases. As you can see, it is also available for Windows, Linux, and Mac as well. Now, I've already downloaded and installed both of these softwares on my system. Let us see how to make use of them. Now, what we need to do is to use Visual Studio Code. What we do is we go to C drive, XAMPP folder, or wherever you have installed your XAMPP software. We go to that folder, locate htdocs, and let us now create another folder, and you can name it anything that you want to based on your project. Since we are discussing the concepts, let us name it concepts. Now right click on it, and here, as you can see, it shows open with code. When you click on it, you can see that it opens Visual Studio Code for you, along with the concepts folder that we just created. Now this is where you will create all your files for your project and will be writing all of your PHP scripts. Now let's create the first PHP file. From here, new file. Let us name it tutorial.php and see how a PHP syntax looks like. So a PHP syntax begins with an angular opening bracket question mark PHP and ends with a question mark and a closing angular bracket, while the PHP script goes in between. So this is the very basic syntax of how PHP scripts are written. Now let us move on and see how to write a hello world program using a PHP script. So to print something on PHP, echo is used. Now to use echo, what you need to do is just write the string that you want to print in front of it and save the program. So hello and welcome to Simplilearn. Let us close it and save the file. Now I'm going to show you how to use the XAMPP software in order to run PHP scripts. Go and open your XAMPP control panel. And from the control panel, you have to start this first service, that is Apache. Now this is going to start a local web server on your system. Now open your browser, go to a new tab and type localhost, followed by the name of the folder that we just created into htdocs, that was concepts, and hit enter. Here you can see the file that we just created, tutorial.php, and when you click on it, you can see your first program visible here. Hello and welcome to Simplilearn. Now suppose you have a program that needs to print this exact same string again and again throughout the program. So what are you going to do? Type the entire echo statement through your code or make it simpler. Now to make it simpler, what we need to do is we need to go back to our code and discuss the concept of variables. Now to create a variable, what we need to do is we need to use this $sign followed by the name of the variable. You can name it anything you want. So let us name it str and type hello and welcome to Simplilearn. So this is our first variable. Now this variable str stores this string value. Also, you can create different variables for different purposes, such as if you want to store a number, suppose. So you can store number 5, and suppose you want to store a floating variable, and that would be float, and a floating variable is a number with decimal points, so 7.6. So now we have 3 variables in a program. Now, one thing to notice if you're coming from a different programming language is that you don't need to define the type of variable in PHP. That is, if it is a string, number, or a floating variable. Now, to print this, we can use echo, but when you want to print a variable in echo, you need to do things a little differently. So let us start with h1 heading Now to print a variable, what you need to do is you need to use dot followed by the name of the variable, that would be str, and another dot followed by, if you want to type something along with the variable, I'm going to copy this code and paste it. Now let us change the size of the headings. And also change a variable. So in the second line we are going to print num, and in the third the float that we created. So now we have all of our variables into our echo. Now let us save this program and see what it does. So as you can see, the variables are printed on your program and you don't have to write them again and again. You can simply write the name of the variable along with echo and dot and print it along. Now that we know about variables, suppose you want to print the names of different laptop brands available in the market. Now what you're going to do you create different variables for each name, that is a variable for HP, a variable for Lenovo, a variable for Asus, or do you want a single variable to store all of the names of the laptop brands available? Now with arrays, it is possible to store different information of the same data type, that is integer, string, under a single variable. The condition is all of the data that is stored under the variable should have the same data type. Now, let us see how array works. Now, array stores multiple values in a single variable, as we already discussed. Now, to make an array, first what we need to do is name a variable laptop brand and type in array function, and under that function we are going to write the names of different laptop brands, that is HP with separated by commas, Lenovo, Asus and Dell. So suppose these are the 4 laptop brands that are available in the market in your area. Now what you need to do is you need to print what is in this particular variable, that is laptop brand. So to print it, you need to first create variable dump. Now what variable dump does is, it, as you can see here, it exports the variable that is in its function. Now we are going to write the variable that we just created into the variable dump function, and it will just return the data type and value. Now suppose you want to print it. So to print it, what we need to do is just add echo in front of it. Okay, now before moving on to seeing the result of this program, let us just make this part of the code inactive. Now to do that, we are going to learn a new concept in between, that is comments. So comments are the lines in a code that are not executed while the program is run. So a single line comment starts with 2/ and anything written in front of it does not run along with the code. So these comments are very useful when you're writing a code to make your code readable and more understandable by any coder who will or might later on use the code that you've just created. Now suppose what we can do with comments is, I'm going to write a comment just in front of it. This is a string variable. Now, after these slashes, anything written is not executed when I'm going to run the program. Also, now, what do? If you want to make this whole part of the code not functioning, do you add 2 slashes in front of everything? Or you can use a much simpler method, that is multi-line comments. To use multi-line comments, what you're going to do is use slash star. This marks the start of the multi-line code, and to end this, use star and slash again, and everything in between does not run when you're going to run your program. So we will now see how this array works. We will just reload this page, and as you can see, HP, Lenovo, Asus and Dell are visible here. Also, you might notice this array 4 shows the length of the array, and this shows the position where all of these strings are inside the array. That is, an array starts with the 0 position, not 1 but 0. So the first would be 0 position, that is HP, and then 1 Lenovo, and subsequently Asus and Dell. Now suppose you just want to print the second variable in your array. What you need to do is you need to go back to your code, and in front of the variable you need to write the position that you want to print under square brackets, that is, the second position in array would be number 1. And save the code, go back to the browser, and only the second array is the second variable in the array is visible. Now suppose instead of a variable you want to create a value that you don't want to be changed throughout your entire program. So consonants are used for the same purpose. Now consonants are very much like variables, except that once they are defined, they cannot be changed or undefined. So let us see how consonants work. First, we will put this code under a comment and now start writing a consonant. So to define or create a consonant, what you need to do is use the define function, and inside the define function what you need to do is you need to write the name of the consonant. And okay, first let us write the name of the consonant. Suppose laptops, followed by the value of the HP, consonant, Lenovo and Asus, and that's it. And you close the define function, and there you have defined your consonant in your PHP script. Now this cannot be changed or undefined throughout your program. Now to print it, what you need to do is type echo followed by the name of the consonant that you just created. So the name of the consonant is laptops. Save the code, go back, and HP, Lenovo and Asus are visible here. You can also create consonant arrays along with a normal consonant. Now to create a consonant array, you just need to add a square bracket. Just a second. Let me close this one. Separated by commas, and now we have the names of the laptop as an array, which by the way cannot be changed or undefined throughout your code, just like any other consonant. Now suppose you want to just print the name of the third laptop that is available in the market. Now what you need to do is you need to write the position, and the third position in case of arrays would be number 2. Save, and only Asus is visible here. So this is how consonants and variables work in PHP. Now before moving on to the next section, let me give you another situation. Now suppose I want you to print a number only and only if it is greater than 7. How do you do that? Now since it is a condition, conditional statements are used to perform different actions based on different conditions. Now some of the conditional statements include in PHP are if else, if, else if, else, and switch. And we're going to discuss them one by one. So the first one is if. Now let me create a variable. Let us name it var and write the value 8. Now the example that we just discussed, if we want to check if this variable is greater than 7 and only then print the variable on our screen. Now to do that, what we need to do is type in if, and in the bracket we need to type the condition that we're going to check, that is if variable greater than 7. Now use curly brackets, and inside the curly bracket write the code that you want to execute only and only if the condition of this if is met. So we need to print this variable. So echo var and go and save it. Now go back and reload, and you can see 8 is printed here. Now let us go back and change the value of the variable to 5 and save it. Go back, reload, and as you can see, nothing is printed on the screen since the condition that we just mentioned inside if does not meet. Now suppose I tell you that if the condition does not meet, you have to print a string saying that the condition did not meet. How do you do that? To do it, what you need to add after if is else. And else does not need to have a condition, since as the English word suggests, it is else, which means the condition of if did not meet, and inside the else we're going to write the code echo the condition did not meet. Save it. The condition did not meet. Now time for another condition. Now suppose I ask you to check if a number is divisible by 2, 3 or both. How do you do that? Now to do that, first let us create a number 6. Now check if variable %2 is equals to 0. Now what this shows is this brings out the remainder, and if the remainder is 0, that means it is divisible by 2. And we need to add one more condition here, and variable %3 equals to 0. And what this does is it checks if both of these conditions are true, that is, if the number inside the variable is divisible by both 2 and 3, we will display divisible by both. Now, what we need to do is we need to check if it is divisible by 2. So, else if. So since it is else if, we need to add a condition in it too. Else if variable %2 equals to 0. Echo divisible by 2. Similarly, divisible by 3. Another, you can add as many else if statements as you want, and the final else will show okay. Let us go back and save a program. Since a variable is 6, it should show divisible by both. And you can see it shows exactly the same, divisible by both. Now let us change the value and see if our program works. So what we are going to do is we are going to change the value to 4, save a program and run it again. Divisible by 2. Similarly, 9, divisible by 3, and finally 13, not divisible by either 2 or 3. So this is how you can make use of if, else if, and else statements. Now the next conditional statement is switch statement. Now the switch statement is used to perform different actions based on different conditions. So let me again give you a situation so that you understand better. So suppose you're playing a game which has 4 different levels, and first level is easy, medium, hard, and extreme. So you need to print that. Now what will you do? You can also use if, else if, but it's a lot of code. Switch statement makes it a lot simpler and more readable. So what we need to do is we need to type in switch. Okay, first what we need to do is first we need to create a variable. So a variable, suppose, let us name it level, and level is 3. To create a switch statement, you need to type in switch and enter the name of the variable that will be passed into the switch statement to check for the conditions. Level, and it also begins with a curly bracket, and inside the switch statement what you need to do is you need to type case. That is, the first case would be case 1 followed by a colon and the statement that you want to execute, that is echo you are playing at easy level. And since you want your program to stop here itself, what you need to do is you need to type in break. Similarly, for rest of the levels, I'll just copy this code here. 2, 3, and 4, and just make the changes. And similar to if-else statements, you also need to add another statement that would be default if any of the conditions are not met in the switch statement. Suppose the value of your variable is 20, which does not make any sense to the game, then what you need to do is you need to display a default error message, and that would be invalid input. And you also need to end the switch statement with a curly braces and end the PHP program. Alright, let us save it, go to a browser and run. You are playing at hard level. I guess you must have understood the concept. Let us just one more time change the value of the variable to 20, save it, go back, invalid input. So this is how the conditional statements in PHP work. Next, what we're going to talk about is PHP loops. Now suppose you want to run a block of code or a part of code again and again and again, or in other words, in loop. So PHP has that functionality known as PHP loops to do the same task. Now there are different types of PHP loops available, that is while, do while, and for loops, which we will be discussing in this part of the video. Now let us start with the while loop. Now the while loop loops through a block of code as long as the condition that you have entered or specified in the while loop is true. So let me just remove it. Now to write a while loop, what you need to do is type while followed by the condition. And to write the condition, what we need to first do is let us create a variable and well give it a value of 2. Now the condition which we are going to write is, this is just an example, so if or while the value of variable is less than equals to 10, and then we follow along with the curly braces and type the code that we want to run again and again until the value of a variable becomes 10, or till the value of a variable is less than 10. Suppose number, then the variable, that is where, and that's about it. Now what we need to do is we need to increase the value of the variable, else this code will run for an infinite amount of time and the system might crash. So to increase the variable in each iteration, what we need to do is we need to use the ++ operator, which will increase the value of the variable by 1 in each iteration. Now we're going to save the code and run it, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and so on. Let me just add break here, and you can see all of the numbers up until 10 are visible here, and after 10 the loop just stops. So let me explain it again. So what we are doing is we are writing while along with the condition until when the code is supposed to be run again and again. So the condition is if the value of the variable is less than or equals to 10. Since a value of our variable is 2, the condition is true, so the code inside of this while is executed and the code will display the value of the number, and the variable value will increase with each iteration until it becomes greater than 10, and then the loop will exit. Now the do while loop is very similar to the while one, the only difference being in case of a do while loop, a code, this code will execute at least once. I'll show you how it works. So in case of do while, we start with do curly braces. Let us use this same example, and after the curly braces what we do is we write while along with the condition, that is equals to 10. Let me just okay, now let me tell you why do we need do while loop. Suppose the value of a variable is 11. Now since the condition does not meet, in case of the while loop it will not even run once. Now suppose you want to display the current value of the variables whether or not if it meets the condition at least once. So in case of do while, it will first go into this do loop, run the code, and then after the do loop is complete, this part of the code is complete, it will go on to the while part and check the condition. Now if the condition does not meet, the loop will end here, and if it meets, it will continue until the condition does not meet the while part. So it will run at least once. Now save this and go back to a browser and reload this program, and as you can see number 11 is visible here. So do while is helpful in some cases, which you'll realize as you start coding more and more. Now next up is for loop. Now for loop is used when we already know how many times we want the loop to run. So for loop is used when you want to run a piece of code a specific number of times. Now let me show you how it works. Now the for loop is written in three parts. Here we don't need to define a variable beforehand. The first part of the for loop is defining the value of the variable. So variable is equals to, let us value it at 1. Now we want to make it run till suppose 6 values. So what we need to do is we need to write the condition in the second part of the for loop. If variable less than equals to 6, and in the third part will be the incremental part. So as you can notice, in while and do while, we put the incremental part inside the block of the code. Here the incremental part is inside the for function itself. Variable plus plus. And then we start with the curly braces and we write the code similar to, I'll just copy it from here. And now let us just save it and print to show you how it works. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now these loops are a very important aspect of programming, and you all should try out different problems based on loops by yourself. Now next up in PHP is PHP Functions. Now functions are a very useful and very important part of programming in any language. Now, functions are of two types: built-in functions and user-defined functions. Now built-in functions are the functions that are already present inside the framework of your programming language. A very popular example of a function, built-in function of PHP is echo. Echo is a function that is already built in PHP and is used to print out variables, strings and values on the screen. Now, user-defined functions are functions you create yourself to use a code repeatedly in your program. So I'll explain you with while writing the code itself. So suppose you want to use this for code 4 or 5 times in your program. So, or even more, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 times in your program. If you're writing a very large program, you want to print or use this part of the code 100 times in your program. What do? Do you write this entire code or copy paste this entire code again and again 100 times and make your code lengthier? Or do you just want to use this piece of code from here, from anywhere in your program? Now, to do that, we need to put this piece of code inside a user-defined function. So how do we do that? We do that by writing function followed by, suppose you want to call this function a name and start with curly braces. Now this is a user-defined function named name. Now inside this name function is a piece of code, this for. Now how do we reuse it? I'll show you in a second. So suppose you are a long way from your code, from this code. You don't even know where it is. You want to use this code again after writing hundreds of lines of code. So how do you do it? You just type the name of the function, that is name, and close it. That's about it. This is called calling a function. So it is similar to calling a friend for help. So here you just called your friend name to execute this part of the code. here. Save. And well, there are no changes since the output will be the same. Let us make some changes. Add another echo. I am going to run it again later. And call this function again. Save it. And as you can see, once the function is called, the output is printed, and I'm going to run it again later, and then again the function is called and it uses the same piece of code again and again and again. See how simple coding can be when you know what to use when. Now we move on to the final part of the video, that is creating a form and collecting its information to display on a screen using PHP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file, say form.html, and start writing some HTML code for a form. Form action. Now here what I'm doing is you need to pay a lot of attention. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write form.php. Now this is the file that I'm going to be creating later on, which will be linked to this HTML file, which will in turn run the PHP script on the HTML page on a web browser. We also need to write the method that will be post. Now let us create a very simple form that will display the name, email, and I think that's about it. Name, input type would be text, second would be email, input type would be text, name, no, this would not be name, this will be email. Also, this is just for example. You can also put the input type as email for an email and input type as password for a password. And let us add one more field. Only two fields will not look good. So let's say blood group. Input type would be text, name be group, and I think our form is complete. Let us have a look. Now what we're going to do is, since we created a new file, we have to go to the concepts folder and look at the new file form.html, click on it, and as you can see, it is the basic form that we just created, name, email, and blood group. Now we need to add one more thing in our form, that is the submit button, which will submit the details of the form. Let us go back and save, reload, and here we have a submit button. It does nothing yet. Now we are going to create form.php file and write a PHP script to collect the form data. Let us start our PHP script. Let me indent it a little bit. So in this PHP script, what we're going to do is we are going to create three variables separately for all the three values in a form. That is, you can name it anything. So the first variable could be the same as name. Now to retrieve the value from the form, what you need to use is an array post. Now this super global array is used to retrieve the value from the form. Now in this post array, what you need to enter is the name that you just entered for the values in the fields. So we named it name. Second variable would be for the email. You can name it anything else. What you need to have same is this name with this name. Now third, let us change the name. The third was blood group, so we'll type in the complete blood group, use the post global variable, and here we will write the name what we've just given here, which would be B group. And now what we need to do is we need to display this information that we just retrieved from the form on our page. So to display it, echo information display let us start with name. And copy this code instead of writing it again and again. Email, blood group, and go save it and enter the details in our form. Mac email address would be mac@simplylearn.com and blood group would be B positive, which we all should be, and let us click on submit. Information display, as you can see, name, email, and blood group is displayed. So let me just add Save it, go back, and the information is displayed a little neatly now. So you get the point. We use post method to retrieve the information from our forms. We also can use get method, but it is not secure. In case of get method, all the information is also displayed in the URL section of the web page. Hence, it is not usually recommended in case of secure transactions, especially. How to link MySQL database to your HTML code with the help of PHP. Now, to do that, we will build a simple registration form whose data will be uploaded to the MySQL database. And in this tutorial, you will learn how to create that database, how to link it to your web page, and also how to delete the tables or entries from the database. Also guys, for this tutorial, we'll be working on XAMPP and Visual Studio Code. Now let's get started. So first we'll open the C drive, XAMPP folder, htdocs, and let us create a folder. Let's name it tutorial and open the Visual Studio Code and start writing the code for our registration page. Let's create a file and name it index.php. Let's give the title as registration form and close the head. Now let's give some heading to a registration page. Now to make it a little more interesting, let us suppose the registration page is for a blood donation camp. So we will name our heading as the blood donation camp and close it. Now let's give some background color to the page. Now to give some background color, we need to first know the code for it. Let's search for color codes. Well, I like the saffron one. Let's copy the code, paste it here. Write div, a heading for the page registration form. Now, as you can notice, I wrote this heading as H1 and this one as H2, since this will be a little smaller from the first one. Let's close the div. and write a form. Now in this action part, write connect.php, and this is the file which we'll be creating later in order to connect our registration page to the database. And method as post. Let's name it user. So the first entry would be name, input type would be text, and we have to give every entry a name in order to use it in the PHP code to connect to a database. Let's give this name. Now what I did here is I put the required keyword here, which would make it compulsory to fill this section of the form in order to continue. I'm giving these break lines to not make the form clumsy. Email, so naturally this would be the label for email. And let me skip ahead with this section. So I have written the code for the different fields that we're going to have in a registration page. So the first one was name, second email, third would be the phone number, and fourth obviously the blood group of the person registering. As you can notice, I have given necessary type for different fields. So for email, I've given the type as email. For blood group, text, and phone as text in case someone wants to enter the entire phone number with the country code. So now let us create an input button that would be submit, and name, let us keep it submit. ID would be submit. Let's close our form and close the web page too. Now let's save it and check if it's working correctly. Now let's open the browser. Before that, first we need to open the XAMPP control panel and start our Apache server and MySQL server. And now let us go to the localhost, type a folder name that is tutorial, and open the form. Well, there seems to be a problem. The other fields are not visible. Let's open a code and see what did we do wrong. Yeah, well, there's a spelling mistake here, and since I copy pasted the code, the mistake got copy pasted too. Well, let's save it again and check if it's working correctly. Yes, perfect. Now, before moving on to creating our connect.php file, we first need to create our database itself. So first we need to go to XAMPP control panel and click on admin. Now this will open the PHP MyAdmin section, where we will go to new and create our database. Okay, let us name our database as test1. Let us give it 5 fields and name it users. First field would be ID and it would be auto implemented. Second, we will name it as name. 250 email. This will also be varchar. Third one would be phone. Variable characters, since people can enter the plus sign to enter the country codes. And finally, we will have our blood group. And let's create our table here. Well, as you can see, this is the structure of the table and the table is created. Now, when you click on browse, it will show you the data in this table itself. Since we haven't entered any data yet, it is blank. Now let's open a code editor and create a file connect.php and let's get started. Now here we will have to enter the name we gave to a submit button. Now that would be submit. Now we will create a variable to create a connection and we'll be using the MySQL underscore connect function to do that. Here we will have to enter the name of the server since our server is the locally hosted server. So we will have to type localhost. Now the type of user, that would be root. Now the third part is for the password. Since we don't have a password for our database, it would be blank. And the fourth would be the name of our database, that is test1. Now we will also check if connection is not complete. We will have to display an error, connection failed. Now in this if condition, we will check if the entries in the fields of the registration form are null or not. We will have to do the same for the second. Second one was, I'm sorry, I did not enter the email. A third entry was phone, and a fourth and final entry would be the blood group. I think we're done here. And now we will have to create variables to pick data from the registration fields in a registration page. Now this post will be picking data what we'll be entering here. Now here we will have to enter the name we have given here. So for the name field, we have given the name as name itself. So we'll be writing it here. Let's copy this code and make the changes. This would be email. Let us also name it email. This would be phone. This would also be phone, and last one would be blood group. Now, I am naming these variables same as the name I've given because naming everything differently would just create confusion in your code. Now let us enter these details into our database. Now insert into SQL command. Now this would be the table name, users name, email, phone, and blood group. Now we will have to send the respective values. That would be the variables that we just created. So first would be name, second would be email, phone, and blood group. Now that we have entered the data into the database, let's create a query to connect it with a command and give a message if it's successful or not. Entry successful. Else error occurred. Let us close our PHP script here and save the code, and let's see if it's working. So let's go back to a registration form and give some details to it. So let us name Sam @mail.com. Phone would be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and the blood group can be O positive. Well, there's some error that we've experienced on line 4. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we did not close this. Okay, let's save it and try again. Another error on line 12. What do we have here now? Okay, so this is my SQLi, not my SQL. Save, resend the form, and entry successful. Now if the entry is successful, you need to go to your database, which I've shown to you earlier. Go to the table users, and we can see the details present here. sam@mail.com, the phone number and the blood group. So now that we know how to create a database, link our database to our HTML form, and see the details into the database entered, we can also delete these details from this phpMyAdmin section itself. So as you can see, to delete this field, I just have to click on this delete button. OK, and the field is gone. Also, if you want to delete this users, go to your database, click on users and click on drop. What it will do is it will drop the entire table. And if you want to delete your database itself, click on this database icon and click on drop the database. Now this will remove the entire database and all the tables associated with it. Now let's enter one more set of details to double check it. Let us give it mac@mail.com. That would be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and the blood group would be A positive. And the entry is successful. So to check it, we need to go to a database, our table users, and there we have it, mac@mail.com, and the rest of the details. In this video on PHP web development, we will learn how to create a website with the help of PHP. We'll also be using HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and MySQL in this tutorial. So get ready to create your very own website. Now, before we get started with the step-by-step tutorial, let me give you a glimpse of the website that I'll be building in this video. So let me just quickly go to my browser and type in localhost followed by the name of the folder where I've created the website. So I'll be making a photo gallery website like this. So in case you're a photographer, you can build a similar website in order to showcase your talent. And if not, you can always create your own personal website for anything you're passionate about. So without any further delay, let's get right onto a tutorial. So first things first, let me show you the environment that we'll be working on while creating a website. So we are going to be needing two softwares, that is Visual Studio Code that we'll be using as our IDE, the code editor, and the second one would be XAMPP. Now XAMPP is a web server solution package which we generally use in order to manage a database and create a local web server. You can download it from these respective websites. Since I've already downloaded both of these softwares, so we'll be skipping that. Now let us begin. So after that you've installed both of these softwares, just go to your C drive, locate XAMPP folder, and inside the XAMPP folder look for htdocs, and inside this htdocs name a folder. You can name it anything. I'll be naming it photo since I'm creating a website regarding photos, and then right click inside this folder and click on open with code. So this opens up our Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, our photo folder is visible here. Now also one thing that we need to do is go back to this photo folder, right click and create two new folders. First one would be CSS. So it's considered a good practice, even if you're using just a single CSS file, it is considered a good practice to create a separate CSS folder inside your project folder. Also create another folder and name it images. So this is where we'll be keeping all the images for the website. So let us go back to Visual Studio Code. So as you can see, both of these folders are now visible here. Now go on and click on new file. The first file that we're going to create is index.php. And inside this index.php, we'll be writing the code for the main page of a website. So let us start. First, click on an exclamation mark, and as you can see, a block of code already written is visible here now. So we just need to add a few things. First, that is, put the title would be, of course, photo gallery. Next up, we need to add a few links to our web page in order for it to function well. So the first link would be this is a link to link this page to Bootstrap. You can also easily find it on the internet, or you can just type in from here. Let me just go to the browser to check if this link is working. Yeah, seems fine to me. Now we are going to add another link to it. Now this link will be for the link for a CSS file that we'll be creating later on. Since we'll be putting that CSS file inside a CSS folder, I am going to link it to style.css. So that's it. We are done for the first part of our code. Now let's end this head section and move on to the body section of our web page. So inside this body section, what we first need is to add a few scripts for our page, which will be responsible for the design of our web page. So these are the three scripts that I'll be linking to our web page. You can just look and write them as it is. Also keep these three scripts at the end of your body. So any code that we'll be writing inside body will be above these three scripts. Now let's design the web page. So the first thing that we'll be needing is a navigation bar in a web page. So let us quickly go to the browser. So instead of writing an entire big block of code, we can just copy it from the internet. So Bootstrap provides you with many such designs. So what we're going to do is we will type in navbar bootstrap and hit enter. So as you can see, just scroll down, and as you can see, this is the navigation bar which this code will display. Also, there are different navigation bars according to your need along with the code. So you can just copy any of the one you like. I'm going to be copying this one. Click on copy, go back to the code and just paste it. So now what we have here is our navigation bar ready. So let us go to the browser and check how does our web page look. So after the local host, what we're going to do is we will write the name of the folder in which we are writing our project, which is photo. Well, there seems to be some problem since this navbar is lacking the CSS design. Let us go back to our code and see what went wrong. Well, yes, this CSS file that we linked here, after CSS there is not a dot but a slash. I think it should work fine now. Well, the problem still persists. Let me go back and recheck. Well, yeah, I've made some spelling error here. This is bootstrap, not botstrap. And let us go back, reload. And yes, as you can see, our navigation bar is well and good. Let's go back and make some changes to our navigation bar. The first change that I'm going to be making is I will change the color theme of the nav bar to dark, not mark. Yeah, go back, reload, and looks better. Now here photo gallery, good. Also, since I'll be using the drop down menu, it is absolutely up to you if you want to use it or not. Since I'll be using it, I'll just change the name to categories, and the three category will be, the first is nature photographs, the second would be architecture, and the third would be travel. So let's go back, refresh. Categories, nature, architecture, and travel. So this travel looks a little different from this nature and architecture. So as you can notice, there's this line that is dividing this section to this section. So let's go back. So that line comes from this part of the code. So we'll just copy and paste it here. Looks good. Now that we're back, we don't need this disabled and the search bar. So I'll be removing that particular part of the codes and this form 2. Go back to the browser, refresh, and all of the parts of the navigation bar that we don't need are have now been removed. Also, this link would be for about section of the web page, and we will also add another section or another link that would redirect us to the contact part of the web page. So to do that, to add another link, we will just copy this code and paste it, and instead of about, this will be contact. Go back, refresh, home, contact, about, categories. So this categories should come before these two. So what we're going to do is we will just copy this section of the code and put it after the drop down menu, right? Now go back, refresh. Well, we copied it instead of cutting it, so it's now visible twice. Reload. Home, categories, contact, and about. Looks perfect. So you see, now that's the beauty of building a website. You don't have to write the entire code by yourself. There are codes already written for all these kinds of stuff. This navigation bar, the carousel that I'm going to be using in the website, the blocks of photos that we are going to display on the web page, and a lot of design templates, you can call them, have already been written for you to use them instead of wasting your time and writing the entire long blocks of code. Now next up, what I'm going to do is I'll just go back to our photo folder, and inside this images, I'll just copy the images that I've already downloaded. Copy, go back, images, and paste it here. So now that we have our photos inside the images folder, let's go back to our code and write a carousel code, or just copy it from the bootstrap. Go back to bootstrap. Here, look for carousel. So as you can see, this is what a carousel looks like. So a big photo on the front of your web page, as you already saw when I showed you the website. These are the different types of carousels available on the Bootstrap website. You can use any of them. So the first one is just a single photo. Second one is slides of photos. Third is slides of photos with this marking. And the final one would be all of them combined with captions. So of course we'll be using the final one. So copy the code for the final carousel or whichever one you like, and go back to your code, and here after this navigation bar, paste your carousel code. Click on save, go back and refresh. So since we haven't added any images here, there are none visible, but you can see this carousel has been added to our web page. So let's go back, and now we are going to add the images that we just pasted in this images folder. So in this carousel code, look for image src. So this is the location of the image that will be displayed. So type in images, that is the name of the folder from where you will be picking up the images, / and Let me just go back to this images architecture 4. Yep. So architecture 4, in this alt type in architecture, and here is the heading. So this is part of the caption of the carousel. So I'll be writing architecture here, and I'll make this heading a little bigger. H3, I think H3 would do. And I don't want to add any more descriptions. If you do, you can write all of that inside this paragraph, but I won't be, so I'll just remove it from here. I'll do the similar with this. So what we're going to do is we will write images slash and go back. What image I'm going to be adding? Nature 4 would do. Nature 4. Type in nature, similar to what we did above. H3, remove this, and now here the last one would be travel. H3, and let me just type in the travel 5, and in this alt type travel, and we are good to go. Okay, let's reload, and voila. So our images are visible here with this beautiful carousel, and you can forward them. And well, does this not look beautiful to you? So architecture, nature, and travel. But as you can see, we have some problem here. The images are way too big to fit on this part of the screen, and it's going all the way down, and this part of the carousel is not visible on the main page when someone opens the website, which absolutely does not look good. So what we're going to do for it now, to fix this, what we're going to do is we will go back to our code editor. Inside the CSS folder, we will create the file that we linked at the start of our tutorial, style.css, and here just write this code, margin 0, padding also 0, and box sizing would be border box. So now to display the images on the main page of our website, what we're going to do is we will put a dot, go back to the main index.php, and from here copy this name of the class carousel item, go back to style.css, paste it here, carousel item, and type img, and inside this we will define the width and the height of the image. So the width would be 100%, and we are going to keep the height at 95 VH so that it does not go beyond the web page. Let us quickly save it, go back, reload, and yes, it looks great, and it's also visible on our screen now. Now next up, what we're going to do is we will be creating different sections on this very web page for the different categories, that is nature, architecture and travel. So go back to the code. Under this carousel code, let us start writing our first section. That would be section class. So I'll be using my4 and py4. The first div, so what we want is we want the text to be in the center of the page, so the class would be text center. And the first category is nature. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to add the images to it. So how do we do that? Also, we are not to display a single image on the entire web page. What we need is we need to display small 3 blocks of images in a row. So we need to create another div class, and inside the class we will define the column for large systems, for the mid ones, and for the mobile devices. So after you've written this class, after you've written this div, the images, doesn't matter the size of the screen, only 3 images will be displayed on a large and middle screen, and a single image will be visible when opened on a mobile phone. So all in all, your website would be very responsive to all the devices that you will be using. Let's just close it, and inside this div, what we're going to do is we will link our image, and the image would be, since this is nature, let's use nature1, which image we have already used in the carousel, nature4. So let's skip that and put the class as fluid, and padding, bottom padding would be 3. Well, I think it's done. So this is the first section. Let's go to our page, refresh. So nature and our first image is also visible here. So what we need is we need to display 2 more images in this row. Go back, and it's now all copy and paste. Just not this part of code, copy, paste and paste. So now nature 2 and nature 3. Go back, refresh. Okay, there seems to be a problem here. Let us figure out why this is happening. Okay, we forgot to add the row div. and without the row div the images will not be displayed in a row but of this. So container fluid, I'm using this since, just a second, let me paste it here. Yeah, and we will create another div named row, and our entire code will go inside it, and we'll paste it. Let's go back and check if it changes anything, and it does. So our images are displayed perfectly. Our first section, that is nature, for our categories is complete now. Now next what we need to do is, I think you guessed it, we just need to copy this section and paste it twice, since there are two more sections. So after the first section, in the second one would be for architecture, the images we need to change architecture 1, architecture 2, and architecture 3. Yeah, refresh, nature, architecture, and well, nature again, because we did not edit the third part of the code. So the third part of the code will be for travel. Let us quickly add the images. So travel 2, travel 4, and I think we used travel 5 already. So travel 6, and go back, refresh, and travel images, architecture, and nature. So half of our website is already done, guys. Now what we need to do is we need to create two more sections for the contact and about. So for the contact part of the web page, we'll be needing a form that we will then go on and link to a database that we'll be creating later on, and the about section will be responsible to give some information regarding the website, regarding the photographer that have uploaded the images. So let's go back to our code and move on to creating another section for the contact. So wait, let me just copy only this section of the code, and of course we'll be needing a closing tag. This will be contact us, and let's create another div. Class would be $50 and auto. So why I'm doing this is because inside the contact we'll be creating a form where there will be columns, and to manage the width and margin of these columns I am writing the class for it. Inside this div we will write a form. Inside the form, the first thing that we need is action, and the action for the form will be about.php. This is a file that we'll be creating later on and the next thing is method, which will be post. Let's close this, create another div class named form group. Okay, form group, close it. Inside this I'll write a label that would be name. This will be our first column, input type text, of course. Let's give it a name. So this is very important. So the name that you're going to write here should be matching with the name in the database. And class form control. Now just copy this, paste and paste. So the second section would be for email. Type will also be email. Name will also be email. Third would be for the number. Let us keep the type text in case someone wants to enter the std codes. And let's go back, refresh, check, contact us. The fields are visible. Now what we need is a submit button. So after this div, let me create a button. Type submit class. So this will make the button look green, adding some CSS, and the button would be called submit. Go back, refresh, submit button is here. Now let us also create a section for the about part of the page, and then we'll move on to making a database. So to do that, what we need to do is we'll just copy this section for the about, paste it here, close this section, and here let's start writing the code. The class container fluid. So why are we using this container fluid class is because sometimes when you don't use this class, the images or text from your web page tends to create, so you can see a scroll bar here vertically, it tends to create another scroll bar horizontally, which we don't want. So container fluid, close this div. Inside it, let me create a class text center. It will say the name Mac. We just give some space and write a paragraph with a class, of course, text center. Otherwise, if the text will start from the extreme left, it would look weird. and close it. Let's add some bold and write, let's see, I am a passionate photographer interested in working in architecture, nature and travel photography. Next would be a full-time freelancer with an experience of 5 years. Well, I think this would do. Refresh. Oh, we did not change this. We'll just get right onto it. Contact us. I'm a passionate photographer interested in working in architecture, nature, travel photography, freelancer, and all of the things that we just written about Mac. We just need to change this to about, and I think we're done. Yes. So our web page is almost complete, guys. Now we need to do some changes or add some things. So the first thing that we'll be adding is an about.php file, and inside this about.php file we will be creating a connection with our database and fetching the data from it, or sending the data from our form to the database. So before that, let's go back to the browser, type in localhost followed by php my admin, click enter. But before that, you must open XAMPP control panel and start the Apache server and MySQL server. Since I already did, I did not show you the steps. So after the MySQL server has been started, you can see this PHP MyAdmin panel, and from here we can create databases. So inside this PHP MyAdmin, click on New, and let us name our database as photography. Click on Create. Now what we are going to do is we will create a table where the data will be stored from our form. Let us name the table as users. Number of columns would be 4. The first column would be course ID, which will be auto incremented. The second column would be name, type variable character 250. Third is email, also variable character 250, and the final was our number, variable character 250, and click on save. So as you can see the structure of our table, the table users has been created inside the database photography. Now we need to go back to our code and write the code, PHP code, to connect our form to this database. So first variable that I'll be creating is con to connect the database. Since a server is locally hosted, the name of the server would be localhost root, that is the default. Now if connection, so this if condition will check if the connection is successful or not, and if successful, display connection successful. Next, also add if the connection is not successful, we should always have an error message, connection failed. Next, what we need to do is we need to MySQL select underscore db, and inside this we need to mention the name of our database, which is photography. Let's just go back and recheck photography, because the name is very important. If you mess with the name, the entire code goes to bin. Now let me create some variables which will fetch the data from the form in order to send them to the database. So let's keep the same names so that we don't create any confusion. Email, and of course number, post. So now that we have our variables, we need to run a query. So since we are fetching the data from the form and inserting it into a table, we need to run a query for insert into the name of the table, that is users, and then name, email, number, followed by the values that we'll be giving them. So notice this is the name of the fields that you've given in your table, and these values are these variables that we've just created. So inside it, name, second would be email, and third would be number. I think the query is done. Now to check if it works, we will run another query. And I am going to add a header file here, because once you click on submit button, let me just go back. So if you click on submit button here, the page will redirect to a different page which will just display connection successful. We don't need that. We need to stay on this page itself. So in order to do that, I am writing this header file with the location of index.php, enter, and I think we are done here. Now let's go back and add some details. Mac @simplylearn.com, number would be 123456789 0. Click on submit. go back to your database, click on browse, and if the connection would be successful, you can see the data here, and we can MAC, email and number. That's great. So now let's move on to the final section of the website. So how do we make this categories navbar work? Well, it's pretty simple. We just need to redirect to a section of a web page whenever clicked a button. So when we click on nature, we need our web page to be redirected to this section. So let's just go back to our code, and what we're going to be doing is we will create links, just a second, for every section of our web page. So let's go back to the first section, that is nature, and here write, give it an ID. So the ID for this section would be nature, close the tag, cut and paste it here. So as you can see, this ID, this section of our web page is enclosed in this ID. So now with this a tag we can refer this section of the web page to any button. Similarly, we will add another ID here. So the ID would be architecture, of course. Make sure the spellings are correct. Put it after the section. Now go back a ID. This would be travel. Okay, just a second. Cut it, paste it here. Again, what I'm going to do is, instead of writing it again and again, I'll just copy it from here, paste it. Since this is contact us, let me just put contact here, contact, yep, and the section, right, and this will be, of course, about. Yes, good. Now what we need to do is we need to refer these sections with the respective IDs to the buttons. Go back to the navbar code on your web page. So here is a navbar code. So inside it you can see after every button there's a reference. You just need to add the name of your ID. Do not remove this, and architecture, travel, contact and about. Let's go back, refresh, click on categories. Okay, what happened here? Okay, no, nature, yep, travel, yep, contact, about. So everything works perfectly now. So while we're at it, let me first show you rob @ start.com 123455555. Click on submit. So as you can see, whenever you click on submit, it redirects you to the front of the web page. I don't want that. Yeah, the database is working, so just go back to the about.php, and here we added the header location index.php, so it is redirecting the code to the start of the web page. What we need to do is we need to redirect it to a particular section, that is contact. So just add contact in front of it, save, go back, scroll down, Tony @starkindustries.com 12377777777. Click on submit. And as you can see, after you click on submit, the page does not go back to the starting, it just stays here while the data has been submitted to our database. Now that we have completed our website, a quick question for you guys. If you were asked to create a website based on your interests, what would the website be about? Let us know in the comment section below.
PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor. It is one of the most used open-source general-purpose scripting languages that is especially suited for web development and can be embedded into HTML. Now let's see how the code works. The server executes the PHP code and then the client receives a generated HTML. However, if a newcomer wants to learn an open-source scripting language, PHP is the right choice for him. Moving forward, let us see who is a PHP developer. What job does he have to do? A PHP developer is a professional who develops applications, programs, and websites using the dynamic scripting language called PHP. However, the job isn't as easy as it sounds. Moving forward, let us have a look at the roles and responsibilities of a PHP developer. First, he should be able to create, test, and deploy new innovative website applications in a timely and efficient manner, while concurrently working with other professionals in order to meet data acquisition requirements. Next, find out and correct compatibility issues involving CSS, HTML, and scripting, often between a series of different platforms and browsers. After this, let's talk about the website performance. Remember to check the website performance on all sorts of browsers like mobile, notebook, tablet, and solve the issues identified by customer feedback. Once the website performance is done, ensure you analyze, research, and explore various architectural considerations relating to the system design process, including web usability, the website's performance, and database design. Explore and assess different alternatives for implementing new application features. So far we discussed the technical roles. Now let's talk about team productivity. A PHP developer should interact and work alongside other development teams and company management to solve conflicts, establish priorities, select the best solutions, or develop criteria for new content. He must also develop plans for keeping the website updated and current at all times, recommend improvements for performance, create and fine-tune style guidelines for the website's content, and choose the most effective design, tools, programming languages, and applications. A primary responsibility of a PHP developer in team collaboration is to provide detailed descriptions of website specifications such as product features, budget, programming languages, communication protocols, functionalities, structure, and deadlines to the other teams. He should also be able to keep up with the latest programming practices and web technologies via reading, continuing education opportunities, and participating in relevant professional workshops, groups, and conferences. However, these responsibilities may differ from business to business. A small company may hire a PHP developer to handle anything programming related, while a larger organization may have a full IT programming department. Moving on to the next topic, let's see what are the suitable web development tools used by PHP developers. Web development tools allow web developers to test and debug code and work with a number of web technologies handled by web browsers. They can be in the form of add-ons or as a built-in feature inside the web browser itself. Many popular web browsers today, such as Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, and Opera, come with their own set of add-ons and additional features. In order to keep up with the rising expectations of web browsers, web developers need to continually enhance their skill set with better and more versatile web development tools. Some of the most popular web development tools are TypeScript, CodeKit, WebStorm, CreativeTim, and AngularJS. Now comes the important topic, that is, skills required to become a PHP developer. For a good PHP developer, he or she must be able to draw from a robust set of appropriate skills. Here's a list of the most needed expertise and talents. First is to have advanced knowledge of Ajax, jQuery, and MySQL. Then, if you're going to be a full-stack developer, you need to know JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Apart from that, other skills like understanding of APIs, Unix, Linux, and MVC framework architecture is required. Additionally, it is also important to have an understanding of CakePH and PHP Unit Web Framework. As everyone knows, CakePH is an open-source web framework and PHP Unit a unit testing framework. Similarly, having knowledge of Photoshop tools would be an advantage. On the other hand, some of the soft skills required for becoming a PHP web developer is good communication skills, a knack for problem solving, and the ability to think critically. Moving on to the salary of a PHP developer. PHP developer jobs pay well and offer great opportunities for growth. From Glassdoor reports, we found a PHP developer's salary to be an average of $77,218 annually, while a PHP developer in India earns an average salary of 2,64,043 rupees per year, according to PayScale. Also, in one of the articles, Glassdoor has confirmed that junior PHP developers who are less experienced can earn up to $74,000 annually, while a senior PHP developer can earn close to $114,000 annually. Bear in mind that these salaries can be higher or lower depending on the company's size, location, local demand, etc. Now, people who want to start their career in PHP must be curious to know what could be the demand of the scripting language in the future. According to DAX, there were over 5 million PHP developers worldwide in 2013, a figure which rose to 5,500,000 by September 2018. For comparison, it should be noted that the number of software developers worldwide, regardless of software development language knowledge, was 23 million in 2018 and is expected to hit 26,400,000 by the end of 2019 and 27,070,000 by the end of 2023. These stats are enough to understand that PHP developers have a good career in the future too. If you are a newcomer or somebody who wants to become a pro in PHP, I would suggest you take up our Simplilearn certification, the complete web development certification course. Here, you will master full-stack web development in an all-inclusive training program that includes a complete introduction to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, MySQL, Python, Django, and of course PHP.
Now, the most basic question is, what is PHP? So PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor. It is a server-side scripting language that is embedded into HTML and is generally used for dynamic web development. PHP is also a very compatible language. That is, it also works efficiently with almost 20 different databases such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, etc. Next question, what is a session in PHP? Now, sessions in PHP are used to store data for users under a unique ID which can be then used across multiple web pages of a website. Next, what is peer in PHP? Now, peer stands for PHP Extension and Application Repository. It is a framework and repository for the reusable components. Focus on reusable components of PHP containing code snippets and libraries. Next, is PHP considered a case-sensitive language? So this is a very often asked questions in interviews. So PHP is partially case-sensitive since variables in PHP are case-sensitive while functions and user-defined functions are not. Next, name different types of data types in PHP. So different data types in PHP include integer, float, string, boolean, array, object, null, and finally resource. So there are total 8 different data types that exist in PHP. Next question, how is echo different from print? Now echo, it can output multiple strings at a time, while in case of print, it can output only a single string. Now echo does not have a return value, while print always returns 1. That is the reason that is echo is faster, because it does not have to return a value, while print is slower in comparison to echo because it always returns a value. Now, as you can see, both of these commands, echo and print, are used in the exact same way. Next, what are the rules for naming a variable? Now there are certain rules which you have to follow, or certain good coding practices which you have to follow while naming a variable in your PHP code. So variable name must always begin with underscore or a letter. So it cannot begin with a number or a special character for that matter. Next, variable names can include numbers but not special characters. So suppose you want to name your variable number 123. So you can use this variable, but you cannot use number @123 since special characters are not included. Next, a variable in PHP is declared using this $sign followed by the variable name. Now, as you can see, this is how we declare a variable, $my_variable. You can also put a number in between or at the end while naming a variable, just not at the start. Next, name some popular PHP frameworks. So some of the popular PHP frameworks include Symfony, CodeIgniter, CakePHP, and Laravel. Moving on, how to check if a defined variable is null or not. So function is used to check if the defined variable has any value or not. So to use this, suppose you have this block of code in front of you. So suppose you want to check if this x variable that you've defined is null or not. So what you do is you put the isIt function inside the if condition, and it will return true if it's not null, while it will return false if it is a null value. Since it is not null, it returns true, and we can display echo as variable x is not null, while in the case of variable y, it is a null value, since so the if condition will be false and it will not display anything. Next, how are objects in PHP passed? So objects in PHP are always passed by a value, not by a reference. Next question, how to display output directly to the browser? Now, in cases you want to display your output directly onto the browser while running a piece of code, you can use these special tags to display an output directly to the browser. Now, as you may notice, these tags does not contain the PHP written. You can use them directly and replace PHP with an equal to sign followed by what you want to display and end it with a question mark and a closing bracket. Moving on, what is define function used for in PHP? Now define is used to declare a constant in PHP. Also, in contrast to the variables, there is no need for a $sign before declaring a constant, since the value of a constant does not change. Now, this is how you can use the define function to declare a constant. Suppose you want to declare the value of pi as 3.14 throughout your PHP code, and which cannot be changed. So we can use define for that. Next question is related to this question, since what is constant function in use for in PHP then? So constant function returns the value of a constant. It is not used to define a constant, but it returns the value of a constant. So suppose you define a function constant using this define function and you want to return this value, you can use this constant function for that. Next, is multiple inheritance supported in PHP? So PHP only supports single level inheritance, which means a class can be extended from only one class using the keyword extended. Next, what are the different types of loops in PHP? So PHP consists of a while loop, a do-while loop, a for loop, and finally a for each loop. So PHP consists of total 4 loops. Next question, how to concatenate two strings in PHP? Now, two strings can be easily concatenated using the dot operator in PHP. Now, to do that, I'll show you with the help of a code. Suppose you want to concatenate or join these two strings, str1 hello guys, and the second string would be and welcome to Simplilearn, and want to display these strings together. So to do that, you need to use this dot operator in echo. As you can see, this dot operator, so first you write the name of the first string, then followed by the dot operator. I've given this space, and then the next dot operator because this is also considered as a string, and then the third string variable, and this is how you concatenate two strings. Next question, what is the use of function num ar arguments? Now this function, as you can see, is used to return the number of arguments passed in a function. So suppose you pass a certain number of arguments in a function and want to know how many values or arguments were passed. You can use this function for that. So suppose in this sample code you want to know how many arguments were passed in this sample function. So to do that, we declare a variable number of arguments and we will equal it to the function number arguments. Now we will display it, and this sample has passed 3 arguments, so the output would be 3. Moving on, what are super global variables in PHP? Now some predefined variables in PHP are known as super global variables because they are always accessible from any function, file or class regardless of the scope. So in all, they are globally accessible. So suppose you write a piece of code and you declare a variable inside it, it would be a local variable and could be accessed only in that part of the code. But in case of superglobal variable, they are accessible throughout the entire code. They include global, server, request, post, get, files, env, cookie, and session. Moving on, how to invoke single line and multi-line comments. Now a single line comment in PHP can be made using this hash followed by the comment or / followed by the comment. While in case of multi-line comments, you can use this hash star and write your comments in multiple lines and enclose it with a star and slash. What I'm going to do now is I am going to show you the use of these comments in actual VS Code. Now let us take this block of code for example. Now suppose you want to add a single line comment after this variable. So what you will do is you can use this /. This is a variable. Also you can use /. This is also a variable. So this is a single line comment. Now if you try to write something else after this, in the next line it will take it as part of the code, not part of the comment. So what do you do when you need to write multiple lines of comment? So suppose you need to write 2-3 lines about this line of code. What you will do is you will use a /*. Now write the comment, this is displaying Simplilearn. So this is a 3-line comment which you can end simply by star and a slash. This is how you write single line and multi-line comments. Now let's move on to the next question, that is name some common applications of PHP. So some of the Most commonly used PHP applications are system functions, form handling. So PHP is very commonly used to handle the forms that you see on the web pages. CRUD tasks. Now CRUD tasks are create, read, update and delete. So when you will be working with databases, this is a very important part of using databases, that is CRUD, and PHP is used very commonly in that. Next, accessing cookies, variables, and set cookies. And finally, data encryption. PHP provides security through some of its frameworks, which can be used and is used very commonly throughout a lot of websites. So now that we have gone through the beginner level questions that are frequently asked in PHP interviews, let us now move on to the advanced level questions. So the first question would be, how can you execute a PHP script from the command line? Now, a PHP script from a command line can be executed by opening the command line, and inside the command line you have to specify the name of the script or name of the PHP file that you want to run. Suppose you want to run a php_script.php. So you type in the name of the PHP script that you want to run, and that particular PHP script will be executed. Next, differentiate between a dollar variable and $$ variable. So what is the difference between the two? Now, in case of a single dollar variable, it is a simple variable that is simply used to store data. So as we discussed earlier, it is a variable that we define to store different data types, that is integer, float, strings, etc. While a $$ variable is a reference variable of variable. So this is used to reference already existing variables. Now to use or to understand how these two work, you can see this particular block of code here. Now in this code, what you need to focus on is this is a simple variable hello, which contains the string welcome to Simplilearn, and we have defined another variable as var, which contains the string hello. Now in this echo, as you can notice, what we are doing is we are using this. Also, before that, you need to notice is this is the same string as the name of this variable. So first we are displaying this variable and then we are referencing this variable here. So what it is doing is it is referencing the value to another variable. So hello variable is being referenced. So when you execute this block of PHP script, what you get the output is hello, since this is the variable hello, and after that what you'll get is welcome to Simplilearn, since this variable is a reference to this variable. Next, differentiate between get and post method. Now get method is used to submit form data, while post method is also used for the same feature. So the difference between them is get method sends data as part of PHP page URL. Web page URL, while a post method sends data through HTTP header. In get, the data, since the data is being sent through the URL, it is displayed in the URL of the web page, so it is not secure, while in case of post method it is a secure form of data transfer. Hence, when developing a website for some security purposes, usually we prefer post method. Next up, how to connect to a database using a PHP script. Now suppose if you are asked this question in an interview, what you need to do is you need to just write this block of code and explain it to the interviewer. Now suppose we have a PHP script and we want to connect it to a database. What we need to do is we will create 3 different variables, that is server name, username and password. Now what we are going to do is we will create another variable con that will be used to connect it, and then we'll use the MySQL functions which will then pass these variables to create a connection. So these variable values are localhost username and password. These are the default values. Now to check if the connection is connected, what we are going to do is we will use an if condition. If the con variable gets an connect error, we will display a error message that is connection failed. If not, we will display connected successfully. Now, as you can see here, these names can be the name of the server that you're trying to connect. I have used localhost username and password for the default values. You can use the name of the database that you're trying to connect your PHP script to. Next up, what does final class and final method mean in PHP? Now, a final class in PHP means that the class cannot be extended, while a final method means that it cannot be overridden. Now, as you can see in this block of code, we have used the final keyword for a class and the final keyword for a function. Now, suppose this final class is being inherited by this child class. What the program will return is an error, because once you use this final keyword, this class cannot be inherited. And similarly, suppose this function is trying to be overridden by this part of the code, it cannot be because we have used the final function. Next question, differentiate between function overloading and overriding. Now, function overloading, the same function is used for different purposes based on the number of arguments inside the function, while in case of function overriding, the same name and same argument function is used in parent and child class respectively to change the behavior of parent class method. Now let me show you and demonstrate the difference with an example. So let us look at this code. So suppose you have a function named showTitle, which does contain a single parameter and displays, when called upon using this parameter, displays function1. Now if you want to use the same name of the function for a different purpose, what you can do is you can increase or change the number of parameters inside the function. That is, it now contains 2 parameters. So when this same function is called using 2 parameters, it will function differently and display function overloading. So this is how function overloading works. Next, from this piece of code, we can understand function overriding. Suppose you display a function demo in a base class and you want to override this demo function inside the derived class. So what you do is you make another function with the same name inside the derived class with some different properties. As you can see, it displays something different. Now you create an object for the base class, and when you use this base class object to call this demo function, you can use the properties of this function here. While if you create another object, that is object 2 for the derived class, and you use this object to call upon the same demo function, you are overriding this base class demo function that was inherited. Instead, what it will use is it will use the properties of the derived demo function. So that is how you overload or override a class function in PHP. Now let's move on to the next question, that is differentiate between equal to and triple equal operator. So a double equal operator is generally used to check if the value of 2 operands are equal or not. It is generally used in case of conditional statements, while a triple equals to operator performs a type safe comparison, which means that it will only return true if both operands have the same type and the same value. So you can understand this more with this piece of code. So suppose in this case, since they both are equal, it will return true, while in this case they both have the same type, hence it will return true. Now let us check this equals to. So since they both are 1 and in PHP it will display as true since they are equal, while when you are type checking, that is you are checking if they're equal with the same type and same value, it will display a false since one is an integer and the other one is a string value. Also, if you check two different strings with the type safe, it will also display true. Next question. How does exception handling work in PHP? So when an exception is thrown, code following the statement will not be executed, and PHP will attempt to find the first matching catch block. So if an exception is not caught, a PHP fatal error will be issued with an uncaught exception. An exception can be thrown and caught within PHP. So what we do is we use this try and catch method to try the code, and if an error occurs we can catch, if an exception occurs we can throw it, and the catch function will catch the exception, and if we do not include the catch function, it will result in a fatal error. Next up, differentiate between require and include. Now require, if a required file is not found, it will throw a fatal error and stop the code execution, while in case of include, if an essential file is not found, it will produce a warning and still execute the remaining scripts. So as you can see, both of these include and require are used in the exact same way with different functions. Next up, explain different types of errors in PHP. Now PHP consists of mainly three errors: notice, warning, and a fatal error. Now notice is a non-critical error, which means that something minor went wrong during execution and a lot of times you just don't pay attention to it. A warning is a critical error. Now it is given in condition where suppose an include function that we just discussed in the previous question went to retrieve a non-existent file. So suppose you use an include function and the file does not exist, it will display a warning. And the final is a fatal error. So it is a critical error resulting in termination of the code. So as we discussed in the try and catch part of the question, if an exception is thrown and we do not have a catch function for it, it will display a fatal error which will return in termination of the code. Next question, how to call a function by reference. So ampersand sign is used to call a function by reference. Now in case of reference, the actual value is modified if the value passed inside the function is also modified, while in case of value, the value of the original value does not change. So this piece of code here is an example of how you can call a function by reference. Here as you can see, this ampersand sign will call this function by reference, and any changes made in the variables here will affect the original ones. Next question, create a singleton class in PHP. So how do we create a singleton class in PHP? Before that, let's have a look at what is a singleton class. Now a singleton class in PHP is a class that can have only one object and hence provides only a single point of access. So generally in class you can create as many objects as you want, and it will in turn create different access points into that block of code. So in a singleton class you can only create a single object, hence singleton. So this piece of code, as you can notice, is used to create a singleton class. Now to create a singleton class, you need to have the constructor function private. Now here, as you can see, a singleton class is created using this private construct, and it then checks if there's only one instance created, and if it is, it functions properly and displays initialize only once. Next question, how to encrypt a password using PHP. So PHP can be used for encryption techniques. Now the password underscore hash function creates a hash password from the password string using hashing algorithm. So suppose you create a password string and enter your password as password@123 and you put it inside the password hash function. So what it will generate is, we are echoing this generated hash. So what it will generate is this. So this is random. It changes every time you generate the password since it is encrypted. And same when you pass this password to the database using hashing algorithm, even in the database the password will not be visible. So your data is secure. Next question. Mention different sorting functions for arrays in PHP. Now let us understand this question in the VS Code. So PHP consists of different sorting functions which you can use to sort a given array automatically. So if you want to sort an array in ascending order, what you need to do is use this sort function. So it will sort this array in ascending order. Now if you want to sort it in descending order, use rsort, that is reverse sort. Similarly, suppose you want to sort an array in terms of value in ascending order. So you need to use a sort function, that is this. So in terms of value, what in terms of value means is, suppose in a given array there are keys and values. So it will sort the array based on the values, that is this 22, 27 and 37. So the array will be the same since the values are already sorted. Now if you want to sort the array in according to key, that is this, you can use ksort, that is key sort function that is provided in PHP. So in case of key sort, what it does is it will sort the array in key, that is the first one would be D, that is Duke, second M, Mac, and the third R, that is raw. Now if you want to sort this array in descending order in terms of value, you use, instead of a sort, you use a reverse sort. Similarly, if you want to sort an array in terms of key in descending, you use k, instead of k sort, kr sort, that is k reverse sort. So these are the different sorting functions that are inbuilt into PHP. Moving on, what will be the output of the following code? Now, if this code is given, let me give you some time and try to pause this video and think of what will be the output of the following code. So the output of this code will be 21, 21 or 21, 21. How did it happen? But before that, if you got it correct, congratulations. But if you want to understand it, see, a is a variable that contains the value 1, while a b is a variable that is getting the value of a variable through reference. Now, we make changes in the b variable with 2 followed by this variable again, which is calling the value of a by reference. So if we make changes here, we also make changes in the value of a. Now, if we display this, since the value of a is already changed by reference, it will display 21, that is the value here, and again since the value of b is already 21, it will again display 21. Moving on, what are construct function and struct function in PHP? So a constructor or construct function is automatically invoked when a new object of a class is created and then can be used to initialize value in class. So when you create an object for a class, a constructor function is automatically invoked. But this can also be, so it does not contain any value when it is invoked. But you can also use this construct function to initialize some properties, to give some properties to the class, which will act as its default properties if nothing or no new properties are given to the class. Next is a destruct. Now a destruct is automatically invoked when an object of a class is destructed. Suppose you end the part of the code of a class, you are destroying the object. When you're ending the piece of code, a destruct function is automatically invoked to clean up the resources. Next is how can PHP and JavaScript Interact. Now PHP and JavaScript cannot directly interact with each other since PHP is a server-side scripting language while JavaScript is a client-side language. But there is a way that these two wonderful languages can interact with each other. So we can swap variables since PHP can produce JavaScript code to be implemented by the browser. So yes, you can produce JavaScript code from PHP which can then be implemented by a browser, and then it is probable to pass those precise variables back to PHP via a URL. Next question is, explain type hinting in PHP. Now in PHP, type hinting is used to specify the expected data type, that is array, object, interface, etc. for an argument in a function declaration. Now during a function call, suppose if argument does not match the expected data type, the runtime will display an error and that is a fatal error, and the program will then terminate. Now in this code here, what we are doing is we are type hinting. So this code is for string type hinting and this code is for integer type hinting. Now if these particular set of functions that have already specified the type they are expecting does not receive the same type of variable inside them, the program will return in a fatal error and it will terminate. So moving on to our final question of this video, write a class. So yes, this is an assignment, a kind of assignment for you guys. So what you need to do is you need to write a class to solve the following question which I'm going to say. So implement a class named basketball. We all like basketball, right? So implement a class named basketball with an attribute named baskets. So you have to create an attribute named baskets and initialize it to 0 as the starting position, and then create a method named score. Now when the score method is invoked, the baskets must increase by 1. So let's see the solution now. So this is how you create a class that is basketball. Now inside this class, what we are going to do is we are going to initialize the number of baskets, that is this variable, as 0 as the starting position. So to do that, what we're going to do is we will be using construct function as we discussed to initialize some default properties for the class. So this construct function is used to initialize this baskets variable to 0. Now suppose we do not call this function score, which is increasing the number of baskets, the default value will be displayed as 0 every time. Now suppose we invoke this score function every time a basket is scored, this will increase the number of baskets by 1. So this is pretty simple, and this is how you create a simple class which will perform the following question.
And with that, we come to the end of this tutorial. If you enjoyed watching the video, then do give it a thumbs up. Comment your doubts below and the experts will answer them for you. Thank you so much for being here. Watch out for more videos from us. Until then, keep coding and stay tuned to Simplilearn.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.